Okay, well, I have 7 o'clock and I know your time is important, so I wanted to get started. Thank you for joining Ms. Cannon and I, and welcome to my kitchen. I never thought I'd get to hold a community forum in a t-shirt and hair that probably needs a ball cap, but this is how we live these days. So our goal tonight is threefold, and I'm gonna kind of read off of a script simply because I've been asked to make sure I can put this into writing for those that couldn't join us. So I apologize if the script seems a little informal. So our goal tonight is threefold. First, I really felt like it was important to offer a more personable way to connect with our D95 family than through the multiple emails that have been sent since March 15th. If you remember, it was then that was the beginning of our introduction to e-learning, Act of God days, and what we now know as remote learning. Number two, as we conclude our year, I wanted to provide you an overview of a few items that are probably heavy on your minds. And three, we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to ask us any questions that you might have in a more direct manner than just simply through our parent Q&A and sending any of us an email. So three quick items before we get into the meat of what I suspect are your major concerns. First, I want to assure you that our certified school nurse has been working diligently and collaboratively with the Illinois Department of Health, the Illinois School Board Association, and a coalition of school nurses across Illinois discussing, understanding, and evaluating best practices as it relates to returning to in-person instruction. I wanted to share this with you so that you know our planning for safe and healthy environment has been done so with attention to detail and rooted in best practice. This is a continuing process to develop our plan. Next, I wanted to share some information on fees and registration. I know it was communicated to you that registration would open shortly after Memorial Day. I've asked the principals to push back registration until after June 15th to give me an opportunity to have a discussion with the board about suspending registration fees for next year. Currently, the fees are at $150 per child. I'll be asking the board to suspend those fees for next school year. As it relates to bus fees, and this has been probably the number one question that has come up about fees in general. There will not be a refund for this current year. And while I understand that you essentially have paid for services that you have not received, please know that the amount of money that you pay for a bus fee accounts for about 25% of the overall cost of that bus. So while you didn't receive the service, we actually paid significantly more for it. We will be collecting a bus fee for next school year, but we're doing so in a delayed manner so that if it has to be prorated for next year, it can be prorated. Last, please be patient with us as we are just discussing now how to affect in-person business, not necessarily school, but for example, those that need to drop off residency forms while registering. We're at the early stages of developing how we get our staff back and how we protect them and you when you need to come to the building to conduct business. So those were just some, what I would call low-lying fruit. So let me get into the meat of things that I think are probably on your minds. First, District 95 will not be hosting a formal summer school program. In lieu of a formal summer school program, we have focused efforts on creating a summer engagement program that can be done voluntarily. One primary rationale for this is early on, we said giving kids more of the same would not be prudent and would not be consistent with best practice. If we couldn't deliver summer school in an in-person model, giving them more of remote learning that we just didn't have time to develop or enhance would not be prudent. So I'm going to stop and ask Ms. Cannon just to discuss a little bit more about the summer engagement program.
And so just to kind of add to what Mark said, also with the summer school decision, obviously students being on devices as much as they've had to with remote learning and teachers on devices all day, a refresh kind of away from devices for the summer is an important part of their mental health and wellness as well. So that was important to us in making that decision. Some of the summer supports that'll be available is a little shout out to the Reading Improvement team and coaches, because they did a lot of work on what will be released sometime next week. It's a district Google site that's going to offer lots of different resources that have links, reading lists, writing prompts, short videos, choice boards, and a lot more to go along with that. Obviously, all voluntary if you're interested in accessing those resources. If you're looking for book lists and activities that you can do at home over the summer, it'll have everything there all in one place for you to access that if you choose to. The K-5 teachers at the elementary, working with them on checklists. So they created just a short, easy top 10 list of things that you should know before entering the next grade. So just a very simple version. You could make, it's a checklist. You can put it on the refrigerator, and it's, you know, based on 4 reading skills, 4 math skills, and then 2 social or life skills. And that's something that you can kind of just work through in the summer, make sure they kind of, you know, it could be as simple as knowing their facts from 0 to 20, or tying your shoes, things like that. So simple things that you can work on over the summer so that you can be prepared for the following year. The teacher and teams at in all grades K-8 worked on their own individual teacher support. So they're kind of sending home things before the end of the year that if you want additional resources, they're providing that. The Reading Improvement team also put packets at the elementary level, and all students who were considered Title I or resource, we have packets that went into the bags for pickup, and if you didn't get one of those are available at the elementary. And then there's math packets at the middle school, so the math middle school team put together packets of kind of summer practice things that you can work on at home. And then lastly, just continued access to the district subscriptions. Those were continued through the summer months so that you'll still have access to Raz Kids and Mayan and different subscriptions that offer books and reading activities for you to work on at home. So that's
Thank
it.
you, Kathy, for helping to describe that.
Sure.
Last, and this will get us to questions really quickly, and I see the ones rolling in, and I was actually trying to get an alert out to parents because my inbox is filling up with people who can't get into the Zoom. This is all of us learning together. Superintendent's not a Zoom ninja just yet, so apparently I need to click on something to let more than 100 people in, but it is being recorded, and we will make this available in one way or another for everyone to see. So the last piece is this phrase that you may have heard of floating around in the educational circles called create 3 stages for return next fall. So the Illinois State Board of Education has encouraged superintendents to plan for 3 potential scenarios. Number 1 is a return to in-person learning. Number 2 is a return to a blended model. So what that would mean are things such as a rotating schedule. Kids only come every other day, or kids come half a day and another group comes half a day. But the idea is to blend education to reduce the number of students inside a class building, and or could blend remote learning with in-person learning. The third one is to continue remote learning. What I will say, and I think I echo every superintendent in the state of Illinois, is that there is little to no guidance from any state agency. However, what we do know is it will not be a local decision. It will be a directive from our governor on how we implement and what we implement. There has been no time frame given for when we will know whether we are returning to in-person learning, returning to a blended model, or to continue remote learning. What I will also tell you is superintendents do not like to look at the crystal ball and make estimations, because they are typically wrong when they look at the crystal ball. But I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to do this right now. Number 1, I do not believe in-person learning is a chance at all for August 26th. You will be bringing in some schools 3,500 kids into hallways, lunchrooms, locker rooms, and classrooms. I just don't think that's realistic given where we are today. And if it can't be done for one school, I don't see the governor opening unless all schools can open in person together. That's just my perspective on what I'm hearing at the superintendent level. The blended model, as I described, with part remote learning, half day, is a logistical nightmare. It has drawn more fury from superintendents all over the state than I can recall in all my time. In fact, in my 11 years as superintendent, it is the only singular issue that downstate and Collier County superintendents are in agreement on 100%. I just don't see a blended model being feasible in a logistic manner. Delaying the start of the school year and extending into the following summer has not been presented as an option. I don't know why, but it has not been presented. It's only the three we discussed. So that really leaves remote learning as the real viable choice in these options. The entire administrative team and I are keenly aware that there is a lot of room for improvement on how we approach remote learning. Know that we greatly appreciate your support and kind words, realizing we are working hard and trying to do what is best for kids in just very uncertain times and unprecedented circumstances. We learned a lot. There will need to be changes, and we'll need to create a mechanism to understand parents' point of view. Remote learning will look differently. Now for the bad news. We can't tell you what that is tonight because we don't know. It hasn't been developed. What I can tell you is we have a number of lenses in which we need to look through. We need to think about our parents, we need to think about our kids, and we need to think about our own staff and how they can handle and manage remote learning while they're facing the same challenges that all 100 of you are facing, and that's working while trying to raise children. What I will tell you for certain is that we have been planning for the deployment of a device to each student. And should remote learning need to take place over an extended period, that deployment will be a priority. With that, I wanted Kathy to jump in on a couple of the more instructional items that we have been tossing around, but in no way, shape are finalized, but I think is where our focus and attention to instruction will be. And it's three key areas. Kath?
So based on some parent feedback, staff, and the admin team, you know, one thing that for sure we know will be different in the next phase would be that we will be focusing on the standards, the new standards and new content. So that was a question that came up quite a few times in the parent Q&A. We stuck to what we knew was comfortable at, in phase 3 with the review of standards, and hoped that kids could do some of that work independently. But we will in the future hope to move forward with the standards and new content. Direct instruction, however that may look, through Zoom meetings rather than the connectedness piece being through the Zoom would be more direct instruction. Hopefully some opportunities for small group differentiated instruction, and then using tools like Screencastify, revideo, or whatever else other platforms we have to provide that direct instruction to the students. So I know that question came up. We also, SEL questions had come up, and so looking at the social emotional learning for students and integrating that into our daily schedule would be another important piece that we've been looking closely at to figure out how that all works to put together.
Beyond those concepts, I can tell you the administrative team will be spending June 22nd through the 25th on pre-planning possible scenarios for remote learning. I would not expect any indication of what a remote learning plan looks like until after August. One of the things that we learned quickly in phase 1, 2, and 3 is that we expended an extraordinary amount of energy in creating and planning for things that were changed literally hours and sometimes minutes later. We're hopeful in the education world that there's a little more consistency with the messages that we get. But to release something in the end of June or July would only cause frustration when it's changed in August. And certainly when in-person learning and how long remote learning takes, the time between those two will certainly play into what remote learning looks like. For example, if we have to do remote learning for 1 week, it's going to look a lot different than if we have to do it for a month or 2 months. So I just don't want to put anything out prior to that due to changes. So that's the end of the scripted message. Those were the key highlights that we wanted to put together for you. And now's the time for you to ask questions. I see they're coming in.